and swore down on her a white whale bore. Then called all hands and swore he'd take that whale in tow. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go.
That's so cool.
It's fucking rules.
I love a good sea shanty.
I love a shant.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got it.
I've earned everything I've got. Yeah, good.
Mr. Gorbachev.
You didn't build that.
Mr. Gorbachev.
Yeah, good.
Tear down this wall.
Your favorite president?
Tear down this wall.
I can see Russia from my house. Pokemon go to the polls.
Ask not. Yeah, good.
What's your country?
He did say well alive.
I looked up what the lyrics mean to that.
Okay.
So the Wellerman, it's from New Zealand, the song. It's an old New Zealand shanty. The Wellerman is somebody who would come and like resupply ships, somebody from the Weller Company. And Tungin, which was the most interesting, I was like, what does that mean? Is when you're a whaler and you've got your big whale, that you're towing along in tow, you would cut the tongue and chop it up for meat because you couldn't sell it. I don't think so they eat it. And so when the tonguin's done, they'll take their leave and go.
Ew.
The Tungin. Welcome
Hello.
to a chicken in every pod. It was just slightly off sync.
Well, we've been together for almost 11 years, so we say everything in
Dulcet tones.
oh Lord.
Lordy. Wow, thank you all for listening. Welcome back. I hope that you all had a happy and productive holiday. I hope that you all got to travel to see family.
I hope you all made a snowman. Anyway, this is the first episode of 2021.
That's right.
We were gonna record an episode pretty soon in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, it's New Year, yeah, baby, and
New Year, new me.
New Year, new me. And then it was like, oh, there's so much happening. Or first it was like, there's nothing happening in the news.
Oh, it's just Christmas.
We're just waiting for inauguration, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, Trump's not doing anything about COVID. Like, it's just kind of, nothing seems to be moving forward. Even the stuff with the vaccines, the rollout is just like...
It's botched, baby.
It's botched. It's like that show, Botched. Or that show, Bosch.
That's what I thought you were referencing.
I think there's a plastic surgery show called Bosch.
I'm sure there is.
So, it was like, okay, there's nothing really newsworthy, so we're gonna, talk about something, just in history in the past. And then it was like, oh shit, the Julian Assange extradition trial's happening.
Yeah, that was our first draft of this episode was going to be last week.
Yeah.
And we were going to do it on Julian Assange,
Yeah.
which, by the way, we are still going to do an episode on, because it's very important about WikiLeaks and everything.
Yeah, more important than ever, weirdly enough.
But then stuff just kind of kept popping off.
Yeah,
a
it was
bit.
like, okay, well now the Georgia Senate runoff is happening.
That's right. We're going to wait for the results of the Georgia Senate runoff, in which, in case you just woke up from a coma, welcome, it's 2021. Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, the Democratic candidates, both won, making John Ossoff the first Jewish senator from the South since the 1850s, I think, 1870s. Which, surprise, there was a Jewish senator from the South before.
Who was that?
I forget his name.
Senatorman.
Senatorman.
Congressman.
And Raphael Warnock, of course, is the first elected black Democrat from the South, I believe, ever. So, pretty wild.
Pretty amazing. And so Raphael Warnock, tell me a little bit about, so we were going to do...
And we should talk about it briefly.
We'll talk about it. We were going to do that one, but it was like, oh shit, we don't know who's going to win. We don't know how long it's going to take to count the votes. Because the night of, it was like looking pretty promising, but it was still like, we don't know when we're going to know.
They called it for Warnock late that night and Ossoff the next day, while the other events that threw off our groove were occurring.
Exactly. And so then it was, so we were like, let's just kind of wait.
Yeah.
Put a pin in it. Have a fun vacation. Just waiting to talk to you all about the news.
Just champing at the bit.
Just champing at that bit. Does that mean like at a cigar? Like champing at a bit of a cigar?
Horse does. It's a bit and a bridle.
A bit in their bridle?
Yeah.
A bee in their bonnet?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. You want me to look it up?
No. That's cool though. I believe you, but I also think it's when
I wouldn't.
champing at the bit of your cigar. You go, nah.
I think that's when you're doing a really good job with your joke.
Yeah.
You're champing the bit.
Oh, okay. So Georgia was on our minds.
Wasn't it ever?
And can you tell me? So
Yeah.
we were stressed out, because, you know, we've all been let down before.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Biden. It was pretty close for Biden in Georgia, right?
Oh yeah. Well, so Georgia is one of those states that has been the dream of a blue Georgia has been around since probably the 90s. Bill Clinton did win Georgia in 92, I believe, his first time. That was the last time it went blue. And before that, it was not a swing state, but it's one that, you know, I believe Carter won Georgia. It wasn't unusual for it to go blue, but that's because it wasn't unusual for states in the South to go blue. Our current electoral map was basically locked in 2000. Everything we think of as blue and red states pretty much comes from the 2000 election, the cover of the 2000 election. And it's remained fairly stable since, although there's some surprises, like George W. Bush won New Hampshire in 2000, which would be very unusual now. Not unheard of, but unusual. And Bill Clinton, I mean, he won Louisiana, he won Missouri, he won Arkansas, he won states in the South, he won Montana, he won states that would be bizarre now.
Yeah.
But so they've been trying to make Georgia go blue for a while now. And the primary fulcrum of that shift is the urbanization in Atlanta. And to a lesser extent other cities, but mostly Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And mobilizing black voters. Those have been the main things.
Yeah.
And so it finally worked this time.
Wow.
And he won it by a hair.
It was close for both of them.
Less than 1%.
Winning it by a hair, that's like the tortoise and the hare. It's like, it's close, but ultimately the hare wins.
That is what happens in that story. Yeah, it is. What happens in that story famously is that it's always very close and then the hare wins.
That's what we will tell our children, to teach them to be fast.
Yeah, that's right.
And cunning.
Yeah, if everyone's special, no one's special. Yeah, so Georgia was one of the ones that it took a little while to finish counting the votes.
It was very close.
I think there were 3 recounts that all just were like, yeah, Biden won.
And there was extra scrutiny and pressure because it was like, hey, is this going to become a whole other voting fraud thing? You know, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, well, because in Georgia in 2018, famously, this is when Stacey Abrams ran for governor of Georgia, a black woman, who, to her credit, as much as I push back against lib mythologizing of beautiful losers, which we see all the time, Beto O'Rourke famously.
He's the most beautiful loser.
He is. Stacey Abrams did put her nose to the grindstone and work really hard on turning out the voters that needed to be turned out in order to turn Georgia blue.
Yeah.
And she does deserve some credit for
really
that.
Mobilized.
Not all credit, because again, we also don't want to fall into the great man or woman theory of history. It's not all one person. Many activists in Georgia on the ground worked really hard as well, whose names we don't know, who aren't on the cover of magazines, but they deserve our recognition as well. But so, Stacey Abrams lost the governorship by very, very little in 2018. It was very close. I believe of the 3 beautiful losers of 2018, who were Beto, Stacey Abrams, and Andrew Gillum, who's running for governor of Florida, I believe hers was the closest of the 3.
Shit.
And her opponent, who is current Republican Governor Brian Kemp, his job before, the job he was in at the time, is the Secretary of State of Georgia. Luch, do you know what one of the primary jobs of the state Secretary of State is?
Being like, I got your ballots, Mr. Georgia.
Correct. They oversee state elections. And so the person basically who was counting the ballots was her opponent.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's why, that was also a factor.
Yeah, that's basically how he stole it. It was almost certainly stolen.
Shit.
Irony of ironies. Whatever your opponent accuses you of pathologically is probably what they're doing.
Yeah.
Not pathologically is the important part. If you're accused of stealing a wallet, you stole a wallet. You stole a wallet. But if somebody keeps saying you're stealing an election, you're stealing an election. If your partner thinks you're cheating every day, look into that.
So Raphael Warnock, aka Raphael Warlock,
Yeah.
he won. Can you tell me a little bit about him?
Yeah. So Raphael Warnock is a preacher. He's a member of the Black Church, basically, which is a hugely important political organization in the South.
Praise it.
Praise it. That was a great visual gag for our podcast. So yeah, Raphael Warnock. He's the story with Reverend Warnock is he's just been a prominent community figure in Georgia for a long time, and Chuck Schumer worked really hard to get Stacey Abrams to run for this seat, but she turned him down. So Schumer was trying really hard to recruit Abrams. She said no to run for Kelly Loeffler's seat. And in fact, he has said that she was the only recruit he didn't get, that he wanted this cycle. The only one that he didn't get. And she said, I know somebody instead. He's even better. His name's Reverend Warnock. He's a huge community figure. He's very popular. He's an even better candidate. You'll love it.
It's very romantic.
Yeah. And so they recruited Raphael Warnock.
He'd never been a politician, just Reverend.
He was just a I keep saying community figure because that's what he was. Like, he was a major figure in his community. He was well respected. He's about to be sworn in as a senator, but I believe as of Sunday, he's still preaching. Like, he still works at the church that he works at. And he won. Of the two Democratic candidates that ran, which were Warnock and Ossoff, he was the more progressive of the two. He was more in favor of Medicare for All, Green New Deal, things like that.
Which Ossoff, from what I've seen, and he's 33 years old.
Yes, first millennial in the Senate, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, looks like Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah.
I call him Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He seems like he'd be into Medicare for All. He seems like blah, blah, blah. But he is just in this stage where he's not committing to anything.
He's a little too Beto-fied right now.
Mm-hmm. So he could do great things.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not making a strong stance.
Yeah.
The way that, like, the squad does.
Exactly. He's not a squad guy. But so Warnock won, and his opponent was Kelly Loeffler, who is just one of the most deeply unlikable, disgusting people that's ever served in the Senate. The richest member of the Senate. She's only in it for a few months, like a year, basically.
So she is a senator?
Yeah.
So this is her re-election?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because she was appointed to finish out the term of Johnny... No, she was appointed because this Georgia Senator Johnny Isaacson retired. He resigned. So she was appointed, and this was the special election for her to keep that seat. She didn't. She lost. Yeah, so Loeffler's been in the Senate, which is why she was in the position to insider trade on COVID.
Ooh.
She's
one
was
of
one of those. She is the wealthiest person. Well, she was the wealthiest person in the Senate. Her husband owns the New York Stock Exchange.
How can anyone own the New York Stock Exchange?
Hey, somebody's got to own it. But so she's deeply unpleasant, deeply out of touch, and awful. So it fucking rules that Raphael Warnock beat her.
It feels like literally Black Jesus was like, fuck you, and then was like, this is the man to take over.
That's basically it. And you know what? I'm just glad that a man took a woman's job.
Yeah.
That's what I'm about. And then...
That's amazing.
So, and then the other senator that was defeated was a man named David Perdue, who has been in the Senate since 2015. He replaced Saxby Chambliss. People act like other cultures have stupid names. This is some white southerner name. I think his real name is Saxby.
Saxby Chambliss.
Dude,
I've been saying this.
He so do.
Women be shopping and Saxby Chambliss.
Yeah, Clarence Saxby Chambliss. David Perdue's cousin...
Not to be confused with Al Perdue.
Who's Al Perdue?
Like, when you go to learn how to properly cite things, you go to Owl Perdue.
Oh, Owl Perdue.
Yeah.
They said Al Perdue.
Not to be confused with him either.
Yeah, it's like, what is that, like a cinematographer that you once met?
Okay.
So David Perdue's cousin is Sonny Perdue. Which these names are just
And
getting...
his son is Cousin Perdue.
Yeah, well, these names are just getting more and more good old boy as it goes down the list.
Oh, God.
Sonny Perdue.
Uh-huh.
Who used to be governor of Georgia back in the day, and is now Trump's Secretary of Agriculture.
Ugh,
And he's been in there the whole time. But so David Perdue, he got his ass handed to him as well by young John Ossoff, who burst onto the stage in 2017. In 2017, there was a special election in, I want to say Georgia's 7th House District. That might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. To replace Congressman Tom Price, who had been tapped to be Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary.
Mm-hmm.
This race was between Democrat John Ossoff and Republican Karen Handel. And it was, at the time, the most expensive House race in history. And it was all over the news because it was seen as the first test of Trumpism post-2016. Mm. This was a few weeks after Trump was elected, or was sworn in. This is where the slogan, "I'm voting my Ossoff," came from.
Yes.
John Ossoff lost. He lost pretty hard. Karen Handel also went on to lose her re-election to Lucy McBath, who is a Democrat, a black woman,
Okay.
and whose son, I believe, was the young man who was killed in a parking lot over his music being too loud by some redneck. Oh, shit.
Okay, I've read about her running.
So
wow.
she took Karen Handel's seat, which, by the way, this is Newt Gingrich's old seat as well.
Wow.
So Ossoff, everyone kind of thought would just ride Ossoff into I got so proud of that. I forgot the phrase, into the sunset. Mm-hmm. But he's back, and now he's won. He is the first millennial in the Senate. He's 33 years old. He's almost a decade younger than the other youngest senator right now, who is budding insurrectionist and neo-Nazi cosplayer Josh Hawley, who's 41. Ossoff is, he's a Dem. Like, that's how I would describe his politics. He's a Dem.
But he has an interesting history.
Like, I want to clarify what I mean by that even. He's not the worst at all. He's just a normal liberal Dem. He supports $15 minimum wage. He's got some okay progressive things. He said he's not into M4A or the Green New Deal, so he's got some bad things. But he's just kind of a nice, okay
He's wishy-washy
Dem.
about it. What I've seen from interviews is, like, he doesn't commit to one...
Yeah.
Yeah, which is not great. But but it's not the same as being fully against those
Exactly.
things.
He's not Joe Manchin. He's not ideologically opposed to these things. Mm-hmm. But he's just... Also, he's not Bernie, He's
significantly younger.
He's much, much younger. I mean, Bernie's old enough to be his great-grandfather. If you fudge things a little bit. But so... He does seem like a very nice guy, which I like. His Twitter account is funny, going back a few years, because he was just an online millennial that just shitposted on Twitter.
And liked Imagine Dragons.
That's one of the funnier ones. He at-tweeted Pitchfork about when they were going to review the new Imagine Dragons record like 5 years ago.
Oh, boy.
But, he would post some... There's some compilations of his tweets online. I wasn't planning on reading any of them, so I don't have them here, but they're fun. And he's the first online shitposter millennial senator. And for that, I'm appreciative of the recognition, the representation.
So what did he do before this?
So before he ran for Congress in 2017, he had a bit of a career as a journalist. And he also worked on the staff for John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, civil rights hero, and Hank Johnson, who is one of the only Buddhists in Congress, interestingly. He worked for he ran a company that was an investigative television production company that produced some investigations into ISIS war crimes and death squads in East Africa. So I don't know if he actually went and did those things, like if he actually went and did it himself, but he ran the company that produced those investigations.
That's cool.
So
it was a huge success.
Yeah, I honestly did not expect the Democrats to win both of those seats.
Yeah, and it was a real, it was a real validation of, because both of them are to the left of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And so it was a real validation of, like, this is where the party...
Yeah.
I mean, the party... this is what is resonating with
If
voters.
this is the mainstream of the party, that's a good direction for it to go in. And they both campaigned on the $2,000 checks. Mm-hmm. I really thought, basically until the week of, until it became clear that Trump didn't care about this election and was kind of torpedoing it a little bit, I was very sure that Warnock was going to win and Ossoff was going to lose. That was my prediction. That it was going to be perfectly split.
Yeah, especially with the whole, the whole country was like, Georgia's got to vote, go Ossoff, go Warnock. But it's like, we can't do anything, we can't vote. I mean, we can give money, but...
Yeah.
Like, so, it felt like, how much are a bunch of Hollywood liberals' Facebook posts going to influence Georgia? And,
I think more importantly was people like Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood, Trump's lawyers, telling Trump supporters that the election was fake. I think that mattered even more. I think that them basically saying, you don't want to be involved in this. They're stealing votes. They stole the election.
So it's like, why would you even vote?
That really was a problem.
That's cool.
I think it really suppressed a lot of Trump votes. Just enough.
Yeah, I mean, and it's still pretty terrible that, people had to wait in huge lines to vote in Georgia out in the pandemic, out in the cold. But yeah, it's exciting.
It's great. It's great news. And so we were waiting for that.
Yeah, and we were also waiting for any movement about the stimulus checks, because it was like the $600 checks got approved, and then it was like Trump was like, it should be 2,000. Well, he said that before the 600 got approved, and McConnell was like, just do it. And so they did the 600, and then Trump kind of pieced out about the 2,000.
Yeah, because Trump doesn't actually know how to do any of this.
He doesn't. Yeah, he's like a goldfish. Like I wouldn't even compare him to a dog. He's like a goldfish. Like it was like, you should all get $2,000 checks, and then he just moved on to keep continuing to talk about election fraud. Yeah, and so it was feeling like, okay, we're not even gonna get the $2,000 checks, and
we
then,
definitely wouldn't have if Ossoff and Warnock hadn't won.
Exactly. And then I believe Bernie led a filibuster. That's how you would say it. A filibuster. So he led a filibuster with...
It was with Josh Hawley.
But also with...
Ed Markey.
Ed Markey.
Josh Hawley co-sponsored his bill to get the 2,000. The filibuster was Bernie and Ed Markey.
Yeah, but Bernie was not, like, teaming up with Josh Hawley.
No, they were, but that's okay.
No, I know, but I'm saying they weren't, like, leading the filibuster together.
No, this was before all that. Yeah, this was before all that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify.
Yeah.
Because now Hawley is one of the demons of the week.
Yeah, and he should be treated as such, and we should treat him as a pariah, but it just shows how soulless and creepy these people are.
And how fast this moves is that...
Yeah.
Last week, it was Democrats and Republicans fighting over the $2,000 checks, and some Trumpers supporting the $2,000 checks because Trump suggested it, and then a week later, everything kind of flips.
It all shifts, yeah. And
it all shifts.
But it's also, I think that it speaks well of Bernie and how he's talked about politics forever, which is that this stuff isn't theater to him. If some fucking right-wing creep is willing to sign on to help get people money that they need, he's not going to reject that because Orange Man bad.
And that's not the same as Joe Biden saying, which he said over and over and just said again, we need Republicans.
Yeah,
Republicans are great.
Because Joe Biden's giving them credit before they've done anything.
Yeah.
Bernie's saying, if you want to sign on to my bill, if you want to help me out, I'll take all the help I can get. It's an uphill battle. Mm-hmm. Whereas Biden is inviting them into the conversation without anything, without any concessions at all. I think it's very fundamentally different. And I think that Bernie's willingness to work with somebody like Hawley in order to get something done. It's funny because people act like Bernie and the progressives and socialists in Congress are pie-in-the-sky idealists that have no idea how things work. But that's how things work. That's how you get stuff done in that terrible place. And so it's like, the fact that Hawley has shown his ass, I think that's important to talk about. And I think I think that if they do put the 2,000 checks to a vote and Josh Hawley hasn't been expelled from Congress, he might be a key vote on it. Because Joe Manchin said he's not into it.
So, where is that left off? Isn't it left off where they're like, it's
for the next Congress to deal with.
That's so stupid.
Yeah, which are sworn in. The next Senate, I believe, is sworn in next week.
And Bernie was like, "You're not all gonna have New Year's Eve. We're gonna figure this out." And then basically, it was a cop out. Everybody got to just delay it more and more. And so a lot of people have gotten their $600 checks already. Mm-hmm. A lot of people haven't. A lot of people haven't gotten their stimulus checks from before, which is insane. Just awful.
Unconscionable.
And a lot of people are getting their $600 checks on a little credit card, which luckily they can transfer it to turn that into, to pay their rent. But it's just another obnoxious step.
Yeah,
especially when these unemployment cards keep getting hacked, like mine.
Yeah. There's a tweet I saw earlier today, I think from Matt Brunig, who is a policy wonk, head of People's Policy Project, whose work I'm quite appreciative of, who was tweeting about how any form of means testing, right, which is means testing, for those who are unaware, is the idea of basically having a certain kind of income or certain kind of situation qualify for a service instead of it being universal. So,
just kind of how we're doing the vaccinations, to an extent.
To an extent, yeah. To an extent, yeah. Basically, it's qualifying aid.
Yeah.
So the checks have been universal programs. If the checks went to people that made less than $20,000 a year or whatever, it would be means tested. But the thing is that any form of means testing puts the responsibility of demonstrating the means on the people who need the most help. It's putting the burden on people that need the most.
Yeah.
In order to do it, which keeps people from doing it, which we see all the time, by the way. Unemployment insurance, which is means tested. Mm-hmm. Disability, which is means tested. All these different services, housing aid, WIC, all these things, they all have money lying on the table every year. They do not spend their full budgets. Because many people who could use that help just can't figure out what the fuck to do to get it. And that's because of means testing.
Yeah, and I'll add that with these stimulus checks, they're not going to people that are being claimed as dependents.
Yeah, adults that are being claimed
as dependents. And it's just like, how is that going to stimulate anything?
These people that pass this, these conservatives, they don't want people to use it. That's why there's barriers to access stuff like unemployment. Mm-hmm. They hope that you just won't do it.
Yeah.
Because it's too much of a pain in the ass.
We've seen people that we know, get laid off, and they don't follow through with unemployment because it's too difficult, because the website crashes, or because there's shame around it, etc., etc.
And the other big problem with means testing, by the way, is that you have to draw an arbitrary line somewhere, and you're going to have edge cases. Mm-hmm. Like, if you say everybody who makes less than $40,000 is going to get this check or whatever, is the difference between making $39,999 a year versus $40,001 a year, is that difference meaningful enough to cut you out of potential stimulus? No, of course not. You fall on the wrong side of it.
Yeah.
It's absurd. So, fortunately, the checks have not been means tested. That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
They haven't been efficiently passed out, but they haven't been means tested either.
Yeah, I saw someone that I know, their stimulus check went to someone else that, took their social security number or something. It's just, this is really a time where literally no one's at the wheel, no one's...
we don't have a president.
We don't have a president. We don't have anybody running anything. Some good news in LA, we've got a new sort of city council with people like Nithya Raman, and she and some another council member, they just passed, I believe, last night, a proposal to instead of street sweeps, to have it basically, because in LA we have street sweeps all the time where people whose cars are parked on the street, they get towed, and people have to pay hundreds of dollars, and it's just, where you get parking tickets, and it's awful, especially in a pandemic where nobody has anywhere to go to take their cars and park them. So it was some of this fresh blood suggesting basically community run, like, hey, if we need the streets to be swept, this is what we'll do. If we need people to move their cars, let these neighborhoods and communities handle it. It's this really cool, thorough. So look into that. That gives me a lot of hope to see that happening. It's definitely that kind of feeling of like, these people know best. We know what's best for us, for our communities, you know, and I just have such little faith in, you know, the federal government, or even the state government having any of our best interests in mind and trying to help us out at all, you know. We're also having all these botched, like we mentioned, vaccine rollouts. And it's not means testing, but it is these purposefully confusing. I saw a great tweet that was like, Orwellian is when something I don't like happens, and then Kafkaesque is when something I don't like happens, but I have to fill out a bunch of forms.
Yeah, it's not... You could argue it's actually kind of means testing, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because there's just kind of not arbitrary, that's not fair, poorly designed levels, like, of vaccine rollout. Which, if you're sitting... The problem with all of this shit is that it's people that think they're really smart that are sitting behind a desk deciding it. And they think, okay, so we'll give it to frontline workers, we'll give it to medical people, we'll give it to old people and then we can give it... And it's like, that's fine if you can do that well.
But you can't. And it's a two-part vaccine that expires really fast.
Yeah, so people have been like tossing out expired vaccines and
people have been rejecting vaccines, like, because, you know, I mean, and we have... The truth is, it is a, you know, other vaccines have been tested a lot longer than a year.
And there are a lot of populations in America, especially Black Americans, who have a very well-founded suspicion of getting stuck with shit by the government that they're not sure about.
Even the fact that it's like, well, you get the vaccine, but you still have to wear a mask, you still have to social distance.
Yeah.
It's complicated. A lot of people don't know that the vaccine, like we talked about in the last episode, doesn't actually have the virus in it.
Yeah.
And so we have these portioned out, these rationed out vaccines that we're offering to a small population, and a lot of them are turning it down, and they don't have a plan B of who to give these vaccines to because it's all being run so terribly.
When they could they'd be better off just giving it to people who walk by on the street.
Yeah.
So
like
it's
a hot dog or a churro, just like, hey, I would love if you got the vaccine and you also got a hot dog and a churro.
You got to choose a hot dog or a churro.
Yeah, like a lollipop.
Yeah, exactly.
After you get your Band-Aid.
When you get your second round, you get the other one.
See, this is why we should run things.
This is why we should run things. So it's been a real mixed bag of lots of different stuff going on. And we've been waiting for the dust to settle a little bit to check back in. Especially because, you know, I've had my grad school break, so we've been kind of just enjoying the time together and hanging out. And so it seemed like once this formality that was happening on January 6th had passed, then we could probably figure it out and sit down.
The formality of the Georgia runoff.
No. The formality of Congress is going to count the votes of the Electoral College.
Yeah, and so we woke up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Kyle went to CarMax to get our
aux cable
fixed so that we could listen to our own voices in the car.
That's right.
And they kept him waiting for hours, so he was like, I'll just walk around Burbank.
Yeah, cool, because there's nothing...
In a
you
pandemic.
Can't wait inside because it's a pandemic.
Can't really call a Lyft because it's a pandemic.
I did not feel comfortable calling an Uber or a Lyft.
Because of Kamala's, brother?
Yeah, because of her brother.
Sister on the board of...
Here's her brother, I think.
It's her brother, okay.
But so... I was like, I'll just hang out around Burbank for a while. Take a walk, find a nice spot under the tree.
How long could it take?
How long could it take? So like 7 hours.
And so I was, I don't know, cold chilling, and it was like, hey, look, the Georgia thing. I don't know. And it was like, oh, we can pod later. Great. And then it was like, Kyle started texting me things about what was going on at the Capitol. And, you know, like most texts he sent me, I kind of skim it.
Yeah, she didn't read it for like 40 minutes.
What's the word? Like, I screen it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And I thought it was, you know, just Trump people outside of the Capitol, like most people assumed was going to happen. Like the conservatives have given us a heads up.
Like they told us
they were going to
Yeah.
do. And they made t-shirts that said, what is it?
It was Civil War.
Yeah, they made...
Civil War, January 6th.
In Marvel, yeah. So anyway, it was like, oh, that's silly. Like, haha. And then, and I was like, oh, this is good. Kyle has something that he can read while he's something to keep himself occupied.
Yeah.
And then I realized how heinous the thing.
Then she started reading what I was sending,
yeah.
which is like, hey, armed protesters have breached the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it just felt like, I mean, everything has been, I mean, a lot of extreme things have happened. A lot of people have died. There's been a lot of violence from right-wingers. There was an explosion in Tennessee.
That's right, the Nashville bombing.
That leveled a block. And so, like, yeah, crazy shit does happen. But also, for the last 5 years, there have been a lot of Trump people that have been, you know, there have been a lot of crazy protests and nothing happens and nothing gets done. There have been a lot of people saying, I'm putting forward this paperwork to get this to happen, and nothing gets done. So it's like, I didn't think that it was going to be anything. And then when I finally, when it really sunk in, I mean, it almost didn't seem like it was happening because of, we didn't see a lot of the brutality of it at first. At first, it really just looked like all the cops letting them in, basically, and them, you know, just chanting. And I think it was when, what's her name, Ashley Babbitt?
Yeah, that died?
Yeah, when she got shot was when it was like, oh, shit. And then everything sort of started going together.
Yeah, it got very real, very fast there. And, you know, we still don't have the full accounting of what happened.
Yeah, and what I didn't realize was that, so the timeline of events was that morning, so they were supposed to approve the...
So the last step in the constitutional process of electing the President of the United States is after all of these states have formalized their count, right? Who they're voting for, their electors. They put them literally in wooden boxes that are sent.
Ark of the Government.
If we had fun names, that'd be a fun name for this episode. Which they sent to the Capitol, and Congress, both houses, under the aegis of the Vice President, as in his ceremonial role as President of the Senate, they count the votes. When the votes have been counted, and the winner declared, it's done. That's the end of the line. It's the end of the process. So this was the last opportunity to throw a wrench in the system.
Yeah, and so that day, hashtag Stop the Steal was trending.
Yeah.
I thought it was maybe a football thing.
Oh. No, because they've been saying that for a while now.
And
that's been their slogan.
And so apparently, so that morning, Trump had a rally.
Yes.
At, like, the White House or something.
In D.C.
Somewhere in D.C., a big super spreader event, Trump's favorite
They all are.
thing. It's his favorite party theme. And in it, he basically says, like, Mike Pence, I'm asking you.
So, yes. And that comes from an obscure and incorrect reading of the Constitution, which basically says that because the Vice President is President of the Senate at this time, that he can reject some of the votes from different states. The rejection of which the process is basically they count them, and if somebody wants to challenge the vote from a certain state, then they can debate it for 2 hours. And if the Congress votes to challenge the vote, then it goes back to the state.
Has that ever happened before that we know of?
I mean, no, not really.
it's a little late in the process for that to suddenly be like, well, California.
Yeah, it may have in 1876, which we should have to do a whole episode about if we want to talk about it. That was a wild... The closest thing to this was 1876. Okay.
Who was in that election?
That was Rutherford Hayes versus Samuel Tilden.
Rutherford v. Hayes.
That's right.
Rutherford v. Chambers.
Rutherford Burchard Hayes.
Aw.
But that's a whole...
So basically Trump is like...
But so, wait.
Trump says to his people, Mike Pence could stop all of this
yes.
right now.
So exactly.
And Pence is at the Capitol. Trump is at his rally.
Yeah, so Trump is asserting that Pence can, as president of the Senate, unilaterally jump over this voting process.
Make this all go away.
And say, as Trump was quoted from behind the scenes by two different sources, you can go down in history as a patriot or you can go down in history as a pussy. That's what he said to Mike Pence.
Mike Pence is like, don't say pussy.
Yeah. And so Mike Pence, while Trump was giving his speech, released a statement saying, I don't have the authority to do this under the Constitution. So, like, my role in this is ceremonial, basically. So I'm just going to oversee it. I'm not going to do anything. And Trump got mad. And he said, he told his people to march down to the Capitol. He said to go there.
It was like, go tell
stop the
Pence
steal.
to go fuck himself. Go stop the steal. It was there was suddenly on Twitter, like there was all this animosity toward Pence. And this was all, and people were tweeting like, Trump just basically threw Pence to the wolves.
Oh, he did.
And this was all before they breached the Capitol.
Yeah.
So they march down Pennsylvania Avenue, right?
Maybe.
Yeah,
probably.
Isn't that the avenue the White House is on? Don't you know this?
No, it's definitely the White House is definitely on Pennsylvania Avenue, but I don't know for sure they were at the White House, and I don't know if the Capitol's on the same street.
Well, I feel like I read that they marched on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah.
They marched on Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol. This is really complicated too because it's so simple, but it's complicated because all these different news sources portray it in a different way.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of regular conservatives, what they're seeing is either to them, well, it's the same thing as Black Lives Matter, or what they're seeing is a harmless little rally.
Yeah.
But if you look at a lot of these pictures, it's huge. It looks like a music festival. Like it goes on the whole
Will Sommer,
lawn
the
across
journalist,
the street.
he estimated about 30,000 people
in
total there.
It was
DC.
insane. And it became revealed that people were coming from all over the country, which is why Airbnb has now refunded and canceled all of its Washington, D.C. For the inauguration, because basically you had a bunch of local hotels and shit that were booked up by these people, including Ariel Pink.
Yeah. Ariel Pink and John Moss. So they all go to the Capitol, and there are conflicting reports about whether or not the police just let them in. But they certainly got past them.
A lot.
One way or the other.
I think it can be confirmed from video that a lot of cops basically treated them with kid gloves or let them go by. And then it seemed like there were a lot of Capitol police that really were trying to stop them, but were completely underarmed, completely off guard.
Totally outmanned.
They were like
outgunned.
Mall security. Every footage I've seen, they're like, they're not equipped for this type of confrontation at all.
And the FBI has now confirmed that they told Capitol Hill Police and DC Security that there were talk of something like this happening. That there was talk of extremist violence coming.
I should have...
And so there's a real question that I think we all know the answer to, but needs to be legally answered, which is why?
Yeah.
Why did they stand down? There was more there for the protests. I mean, we saw the live footage of the BLM protests outside the White House. It was nothing like this.
No, we have friends that are, peaceful protesters that have been abused by the police and arrested for just standing there compared to this.
Yeah.
So Representative Maxine Waters, she, before that day, she talked to Capitol Police telling them, like, hey, I'm pretty sure this is going to happen. This is, everyone's been talking about it. And they were like, you're completely safe. There's nothing, nothing's going to happen. The whole riot ensues. And we have, there wasn't a lot that was coming forward yet about what exactly was going on. And then suddenly someone's been shot. And it wasn't made known who was shot until a little bit further after it.
Yeah, it was clear from the video that it was probably one of the protesters, but nobody had ID'd them.
Yeah. And so basically, I believe that this was, an inside job. This was completely coordinated and planned. And I also believe that the only thing that stopped there from being casualties of politicians and kidnappings of politicians or holding people hostage is that shooting of that woman.
Yeah.
It's terrible that cops shoot people. We've already established that. And it's pretty surreal though when I saw the video. Basically, like, the mob of people are very violently trying to break into the Senate chamber, I think. One of them. One of the chambers. The door is still broken. It's where they all convene. And the guy, one of the guys is just smashing the window, and the cops are just standing there like, I don't know. And all of the recordings, it's so funny because it's so hypocritical. They're all like, you're not allowed to touch me, and like, we defended the boys in blue, and fuck you guys. It's so stupid.
Just super entitled.
And so suddenly, they're all trying to get through the doors, and in the video you can see representatives inside that are trying to evacuate. And then suddenly, I don't think it was the National Guard. That was another thing with Trump.
National Guard wasn't there yet.
So guys with bigger guns start to come in to relieve these other guys because they're completely underprepared. And so when they're making that transition to let these other guys in to replace them, as the cops start to leave, the protesters continue to break through the glass, and that's when Ashley Babbitt starts to climb through because she's little. She's a Air Force One veteran, I think. I mean, not Air Force One. She's an Air Force veteran and a QAnoner.
Yeah.
And
a former cop.
And a former cop. She starts to climb through. She gets shot. She's down. There's all this confusion. It's so funny. It's not funny. It's funny because in the video, all of the mob people are like, someone got shot. Like, they're all shocked.
They're all LARPing.
They're all holding guns.
They don't realize that any of this is fucking real.
And they don't think that the cops are going to shoot them because they believe all of these cops are on their side, except for the black ones that they were harassing. They think that they'll get them to join them.
Well, and also because they think that when they look at what happens at the BLM protests and the leftist protests, they think that what those people have done, the leftists, the black protesters, they think that they have done the terrible things they've made up in their head to deserve the way they're treated by the police.
Yeah.
And they don't think that they, the white right-wing protesters, have done that.
Good point.
And so they're baffled that they would be treated like a black person.
Yeah, that's the tone of like all of these people that, because they were all documenting these events and they weren't wearing masks because COVID isn't real.
They were live streaming their unmasked faces.
It was hilarious.
And they think that they're not going to go to federal prison.
All these people have been really shocked when they get arrested.
Yeah.
And some of them have been like apologizing, and some of them have been like just then deleting their Twitters. Yeah. It's
speaking
crazy.
of people getting caught on camera. So you saw the photo of Mima from it, the old lady that's like smiling with her little
she's
that
terrifying.
Wasn't at the Capitol. That photo is from a different protest in Kansas, so she wasn't even there. She was just at home chilling when all that happened.
Oh god,
which is terrifying because it's fake news, but also it means that she's she's cute, she looks nice. So I'm glad that she wasn't there.
Okay, good. I'm glad Mima's okay.
Yeah.
And so basically, Ashley Babbitt's become martyred by QAnon, etc.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting because she kind of was a martyr because her death, I believe, saved everybody else. Because...
Yeah. Well, a different faction has also decided that she's Antifa. That's also been a thing going on in Parler.
Jesus
is that she
Christ.
wasn't a real person.
Yeah. And so she goes down, and then everyone's kind of scrambling. And it seems like there's less unity, and all of these people are kind of going down different hallways, and they, trying to open all these different doors. I'll go into the newer news that's come out as of today and yesterday about why it seems coordinated. But timeline-wise, then Trump... So meanwhile, Trump's rallies just ended, all this shit's happening, and Trump is just tweeting, right?
Yeah.
Once it seems to get like they're pushing cops and there's a lot of pressure to end it, Trump tweets like, "Hey, be good. Remember we're the party of
Law and Order.
Law and Order. Come on." And then there's more pressure of like, "Come on, Trump, you have to denounce this." And Pence puts out a statement denouncing it. Hilariously, a bunch of Republican politicians like Dan Crenshaw,
Yeah.
the guy with the eye patch, they're tweeting like, "This isn't us. Please stop. Don't
Yeah.
be violent. Come on."
People like Steven Crowder who have done videos of, we're going to have an insurrection, Civil War people. And now they're like, wow,
Yeah,
no.
so did Dan Crenshaw. All these people that made,
Dan Crenshaw did an ad of him as like a special forces guy parachuting into Georgia to help fight off Antifa for the election.
Yeah, and I grew up with conservatives, and this is the kind of thing that's considered funny, is like, having a shooting target of Hillary Clinton, like, and
this violence is
suddenly,
baked into this culture, and now it's finally boiled over.
Yes, and so, so the pressure is like, "Trump, you have to denounce this." So Trump makes a video.
Oh boy.
And hopefully one of his last. Trump Watch.
He's banned, bitch.
He's banned. Banned from the podcast. And so this video, you can sort of fill in anything that I miss. So he's like, "Hey guys," it's kind of looks almost exactly like his coronavirus one, but he's like more happy and high on drugs, kind
It's
of.
his
like
vlog style.
It's his vlog style. He's like, "Hey, you're all very... Look at you beautiful motherfuckers.
Yeah.
I love you. What you're doing is great."
He says,
We're
"You're
all
very special, we
upset."
love you, but you have to go home now."
But he's like, most of it is like, "They stole the election. It's very messed up. It's very sad. To live in a country where they would do that to me, to us." Like,
And then he keeps throwing into like, "But you gotta go home, no violent." And it's like,
"You're all patriots." You're Ivanka.
there's no way
patriots.
if you're not one of his people, to hear that as anything other than, "This is what I was forced to say."
Yeah.
But really, I think you're doing great.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like it's a love letter to them, and it's also just hammering home, they stole the election. It's like, can you believe it?
Yeah.
They stole it,
Who would
and
do that?
I wouldn't blame you for killing them. Like, it's like, and then everyone's pissed about that, and then I think he puts out another one. I don't think I watched
put up
it.
one, I think, that day.
Well, so then his that's basically, I think he tweets another thing about Pence, maybe, I don't know, but all of this kind of leads up to, toward the end of the riot, Trump gets a 12-hour Twitter suspension.
Yeah.
And because he posts his first video.
He posts the video, and then he posts a bunch of tweets about how, like, this is very unfair.
And Twitter starts flagging it. So so Trump is just fanning the fire. And so Twitter actually is like, "We need to do something." And so it's like, you can't respond to this tweet. This tweet isn't real. Yeah. Whatever. And then
that was the video. The video you couldn't respond to, retweet, or fave.
Yeah, which I responded to when you were still allowed.
Pretty badass.
I sent some GIF. I don't remember. So so then he gets a 12-hour Twitter ban, and it's like, wow. And the next day he gets fully banned from Twitter.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Hilarious.
There's, debates that could be had about the precedent of what is banned on what.
Yeah.
But we
think it's funny that Trump was banned.
It's about time.
He committed real crimes. Inciting violence is a crime.
Yes. So Trump puts out that video. It does nothing but, except it just cements that he's terrible and it's embarrassing. And so sort of shortly after that, it seems like they eventually get everybody out. And
everyone just leaves.
yeah, like I think less than 10 people were actually arrested at the site.
Yeah.
Basically, everyone starts to leave. You can watch videos of a cop helping a woman down the stairs. It's all pretty disgusting. And then they all go back to their various hotels.
And one thing I want to make clear before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the arrest, so the cops were shooting with kid gloves, so they were, helping down the stairs. We are not calling for increased police brutality here. We're not saying that we want these cops to be authoritarian freaks.
Mm-hmm.
We're pointing out that the police do not have to treat all people that they run into the way that they treat left-wing protesters, peace protesters, black protesters, people of color, who they brutalize.
Exactly.
And they say they have to. That's the only way to do it. They didn't there.
Yeah, they didn't there, even though there was evidence happening as it was going on of that they wanted to commit violence. One,
they had guns.
They had guns. They weren't just picking up podiums. They were also smashing things, punching things. They hit
stealing mail, stealing a laptop.
They hit a police officer over the head with a fire extinguisher. Killed him. They were sparring with the people. While this was all going on, it was publicized in the news that they found 2 pipe bombs at the scene.
One guy, as we saw, had a bunch of zip ties that was in all tactical gear.
Yeah, which some people have been like, everyone has zip ties. These were the kind of zip ties that are sold as handcuffs.
Yeah,
it's
well, not
a
just
special
that.
kind.
Not just that. Does everyone that you know, Ben Shapiro, who tweeted everyone has zip ties, do they all take them in full tactical gear to storm the U.S. Capitol while you're chanting "Hang Pence" and looking for certain members of Congress?
There was a gallows set up outside.
Right.
It's one of those things where some people want to be like, well, the cops, we didn't know how bad it was. And it's like, everybody knew how bad it was while it was happening. And of course, more stuff is coming to light that's even more horrific.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was bad, and it was a blatant coup because it was trying to, attempting to hold people hostage until they continue to make Trump
Oh, well, not
president.
just that, it was trying to stop the count.
Yeah.
And it worked. They had to stop for a while. So some of the evidence has come out about it being coordinated with maybe Capitol Police, maybe some members of Congress, some of which has even just come out like today, which Luch pointed out to me earlier. One is that Ayanna Pressley, Congresswoman, member of the squad, her panic buttons have been removed from her office.
Yeah, and
this is according to her chief of staff.
Yeah, and this is really interesting because it shows how little we know of what was actually going on inside, because it seemed like everyone was sort of together, and then it seems like, a lot of people were in their different offices. So Ayanna Pressley and her staff, they were in their office, and people started to
Look for the panic button.
And so they had to put furniture and shit up in front of their door. Horrific.
Jim Clyburn, number 3 Democrat in the House, mentioned that he has basically a secret office, like a private office that is not identified as, because most of their offices have their names on the outside.
Yeah.
And protesters had found that.
They went straight
going
to
to
it.
that, went straight to it.
Yeah.
He said you basically can't know unless somebody tells you.
And I will add that Ayanna Pressley, she's used that panic button before. She was well, versed in how it works.
Yeah.
And it was torn out.
It was torn out.
I just saw a video of a bunch of the guys. Some of them have actually been arrested. Some of them, there have finally been some arrests. And a lot of the things they're being charged for are very, not a big deal. But the FBI or whatever has said that that's so that they get them arrested, and then as they get more information, they can charge them with more.
To secure the indictment, basically.
So some of those guys, they were like, "What's the floor plan?" Okay, the floor plan says this or that. They had information.
Yeah.
Which leads to that former military, right? Here, I'll pull it up.
Well, one of the groups is led by, I believe, a current PSYOPs officer, a psychological operations officer, I don't know her name, but she led about 100 people during that protest, during the riot, around the building.
And who was that politician that...
Lauren Boebert, newly inaugurated congresswoman from Colorado.
She's like a QAnoner, right?
She's not quite she's QAnon sympathetic. She's not Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a straight up QAnoner, but she's sympathetic. She was
tweeting out Pelosi's
She was
location.
tweeting out where Pelosi was.
She was basically saying like Pelosi's in the chamber.
Well, she
Pelosi's
said like
left
she said that we're all hiding in the chamber, and security forces said do not say anything about where anybody is. And then she said Pelosi has been removed from the chambers, and she also tweeted this is 1776 during it.
Just horrific.
So I mean, for all we know, she may have been involved, may have been talking to people.
And so this is one of the big news items. Representative Mikey Sherrill, a former U.S. Navy helicopter pilot and former federal prosecutor, says she saw members of Congress give reconnaissance tours of the Capitol the day before last week's insurrection. So she saw... So basically, like, there are foxes in the hen house, which is funny because the Capitol is already a fox house.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like...
There are foxes in the gorilla house?
Yeah,
I don't know.
like Matt Crispin of Chapo Trap House said, like, this wasn't an assault on American democracy because we don't have democracy. But this was still an assault on all of our political well-being.
Yeah, I'll go into what AOC said about all of that too, which was great. So yeah, more evidence of that. Doing exactly what what everyone was like, hey, shouldn't we have better security? Shouldn't we whatever? And so there was that politician that was part of the rally as well. Like a local
Derek Evans from West Virginia.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's a member of a newly inaugurated, again, West Virginia state rep that has now been, I believe, expelled from the West Virginia state legislature.
You can see video of him in, like, an army helmet and shit storming. Like, so basically, just like we've had a lot of we have, like, more socialists in Congress than we've ever had. It's a really exciting movement. We also have more QAnoners and shit than we've ever had.
Any at all.
So if you and your, local, pay attention to your local elections, try to see who these people are. There's a great thread on Twitter of showing all of the different types of neo-Nazis that were in attendance. The ones that are obsessed with Vikings. They're the ones that are obsessed with Holocaust denial. Or the ones that are happy about the Holocaust. There's like the Confederate type people, all these different subgroups. A lot of them, one of the groups that took credit for one of the like mosque burnings was there, like just blatantly there, which you'd think that they could be arrested just for.
They don't think consequences apply to them.
They don't. And so, this was a white supremacist riot led by Trump. The Confederate flag was waved in there for the first time ever.
Yeah, the Confederacy never made it to D.C.
Didn't even happen in the Civil War, which is a thing that AOC was really hammered home in her video. And another thing is it Priya Jamel? How do you pronounce her name?
Pramila Jayapal.
Pramila Jayapal. She has contracted coronavirus after having to be taken to one of the safe spaces. And they also made her take off her mask and gave her a gas mask, which just imagine how terrifying that was. So there's a picture of her maskless that people are using as evidence of that she's a hypocrite, but it was because they were giving them all gas masks. But so the Republicans refused to wear masks, and over 3 Democrats now have contracted coronavirus, including her. That's biological warfare. It's intentional.
Pramila Jayapal is one of the great...
I believe that she is the House co-sponsor of Medicare for All. She's a very good... She's the chair of the Progressive Caucus. Defend Pramila,
Just makes me so mad. There were protesters there that knowingly had the virus and didn't care and were spreading it. 5 people died immediately related to it. You've got 2 of the insurrectionists that died from, one, a heart attack, one, like, a seizure or something, a stroke.
Yeah.
And then you have...
I think the one that had... One of them, I think, was a woman that died of natural causes there.
Oh, okay.
I think it was two male protesters that died, 2 female protesters that died, and Officer Brian Sicknick on the scene.
So that officer, he was killed by the protesters, essentially.
Yeah, he was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher, and he died of his injuries.
And then, and, you know, Trump in his video from earlier was like, we're the party of law and order, remember that, guys, come on. And it's just like, fuck you. And then a few days afterward, another cop killed himself.
Howard Liebengott, and just recently.
Which makes it like, what did he know?
What did
Or
he
was
see?
he just traumatized?
Yeah.
But still, the blood is on all of their hands.
Yes.
And they also found another, like 2 blocks from the site that day, there was a truck full of bombs and shit and guns. Just a coincidence, I'm sure.
Of course.
So, last night I watched AOC did an Instagram Live, which, you know, she's done everything from, like, make mac and cheese on her Instagram Live to, you know, explain how different things in Congress work. But so she made a video last night, talking about, you know, how she couldn't go into it legally, but that she had an experience that day, which, since we all know that it's very shady what actually happened, we don't really know what happened inside there, except for some of the videos that were some bravely taken and some taken by gloating Nazis. She said that she had an experience where she felt very strongly that she was gonna be killed.
And there have been people on the left that have been trying to dunk on this on Twitter, trying to say that she's LARPing or stupid or whatever. And it's like, first of all, none of us know what happened in there. Second of all, this was an armed attack on the U.S. Capitol.
She is one of the most hated by
I guarantee you
Republicans.
that the Squad, Nancy Pelosi, and Mike Pence were the people that were most in danger that day. Those are the people that, if they had gotten their hands on them, could have very seriously been hurt. And people did die in this insurrection. So it's like, I don't. It doesn't seem at all unreasonable to me. And also, by the way, 90% of the people tweeting about how she's being a pussy or whatever for that, you would have fucking shat your brain out of your ass if you had been in that position.
Yeah.
I guarantee you.
Yeah, and
so fuck off with that.
unfortunately, I've seen that a lot of people are taking very seriously these claims, and, you know, a lot of people, you know, I tried listening to a couple lefty podcasts, you know, afterward, and, you know, some of them, like Bad Faith or Chapo, they were very, you know, spot on. And I tried listening to Red Scare, and it was like, this really wasn't a coup, it wasn't a big deal. And it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, you know, violence did happen. This is a terrible precedent to set, you know, and even if we don't like Joe Biden or whatever, it doesn't matter. Yeah. This is not, I think Nancy Pelosi's the devil? Yeah, probably. Do I think that she should be, you know, kidnapped and, you know, made an example of like that? I don't think so. And what I love is that AOC, in her video, not only did she talk about trauma and about getting help, and she described trauma, she didn't remember who the quote was from, but trauma as something that happens too much, too fast, too soon. And she said that she's getting counseling. Everybody involved is getting counseling, which is awesome. So she was very like, don't worry about me, I've got support. But she said this was them trying to stop our democracy. And she was like, trying to stop a, you know, democratically run election. And she was like, she was getting really mad. And she was like, and that is being charitable. She's like, with all the gerrymandering, with all of the voter suppression that the Republicans do, blah, 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 it is charitable at least to say that this was a democratic fair election. And even with all of that cheating, even with all that racism and voter intimidation, etc., they still lost. And she was just like, she was not acting like this process is perfect. She was, but she was just saying, we can't have this. And she said, that these people resort to violence because they can never win. She's like, and this was so powerful. She was like, we will never be in a white supremacist world because white supremacy doesn't exist.
And that's the story of white supremacy is that they always resort to violence. They always have, because there's no way to win.
Yeah.
There's no, you're not going to convince enough people that you're right to win in a democracy. Democracy is antithetical to white supremacy. It's antithetical to fascism. It's the opposite of all of those things. And so the only way to win, if you truly are a fucking, white supremacist, a white racist, which consciously or not, all of these people are, whether they actively espouse those things or whether they've had those ideas laundered into them without those names and maybe not even realize that's what it is, democracy is unacceptable to them. And that's why it's important to not even defend democracy, to create democracy.
Exactly, and I love she kept referring to it as a multiracial democracy.
Yeah,
and
that's
just
what
like
we have.
these people don't want a multiracial democracy, and it's like
they want apartheid. They want South Africa.
South Africa.
And
so it was a great video, and I strongly recommend everybody watch it. And she said that amidst all of that, she was told, like, go to the safe room, go to the shelter room, and she didn't feel safe enough because she's admitted that she knows that there are members in there that have aided these people and that are white supremacists, that she felt that there was too big of a risk of not only those people passing around coronavirus, which they did, but them tweeting out her location or giving away her location so people could, she said, kidnap or hurt her.
I'd be very interested to read Representative Matt Gates's text from that time. I wonder. He's somebody I put at the top of my list of people that may have been talking to some of those folks.
Yeah. So, she's been saying, and Cori Bush has been saying, and everyone's, they've been putting out legal proposals about, like, expelling these people, and that anybody that sympathized with
Cori
it.
Bush, new member of the squad, put out a House resolution to expel specifically Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley from the Senate.
Yeah, so Josh Hawley was photographed basically given a fist
salute.
Fist salute to these people, calling them like his people.
Yeah.
It's like that's
and
unacceptable.
Cruz and Hawley were both the ones leading the charge to stop the counting by formal processes.
Yeah,
beforehand.
Which a lot of people, including AOC, are saying that that's just as much.
Oh, it's absolutely
firing
incitement
these
of this.
people. Yeah,
exactly, because it's bullshit.
Yeah,
it's fake. It's all grandstanding, and it's just putting into the record what these people believe.
Yeah, a great thing that she said too was, so she was saying how those people need to not be allowed in. Which nothing's happened with that, which is shameful.
Well, the Senate they won't, because the Senate's not in session.
Yeah, which is a cop-out. And then another thing that AOC was talking about is how a bunch of Trump secretaries have resigned.
Yeah.
And she was talking
Elaine
about...
Chao, Transportation Secretary, Betsy DeVos, Education Secretary, and Chad Wolf, Acting Homeland Security. They've all resigned.
Isn't one of them McConnell's wife?
Elaine Chao.
Elaine Chao. And she was, like, supporting all of this, like, right before. So AOC was saying, like, all of these people, they would be the people that would have to help invoke the 25th Amendment.
Yes.
And say that Trump is unfit. And so by them resigning, she was calling them out as cowards.
Yeah, which they are.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the events of today and the truncated topic of our episode. Obviously, it'll be shorter if you're listening, but we're almost an hour 30 in, so we're not gonna have a full talk. This is a different structure.
Yeah, especially because Pence has said that he's not gonna declare Trump unfit.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's like-
wait. Before we get
yeah,
into any of
okay.
that, I want to get into the actual topic, which is the removal of a president. How is a president removed? What are the processes that can happen under? Where are those processes at right now? Mm-hmm. Start with the 25th Amendment. Basically, the 25th Amendment to the United States Constitution provides in it a way to remove the president for unfitness. The process basically is that either majorities of both houses of Congress or the vice president and a majority of the cabinet have to make a declaration basically that they're invoking the 25th Amendment, which will remove the presidency from the president, put it on the vice president. The president can appeal this decision, and then there's a whole process that happens.
Which this should have happened during the coronavirus shit.
Yeah. Well, the reason Mike Pence isn't doing it is because in his statement, he said that like he didn't think that he had the constitutional authority to undo the election, he also doesn't feel he has the constitutional authority to invoke the 25th Amendment. Because in his interpretation, and honestly this was probably the intention when it was written, the 25th Amendment is for medical and emotional unfitness. By which I mean actual diagnosable breaks from reality.
So not the president's a Nazi, but the president is...
The president
is
has had a stroke and can't read.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that.
Hasn't stopped our past presidents before.
No. Well, this was instated in large part because of Woodrow Wilson.
Okay.
Who was incapacitated
And
for the
did
last
his
year of his
wife
life.
take over?
Edith Wilson was basically the president
Yeah,
for
it's
a
a
year.
fun thing to look up, Edith Wilson.
Yeah.
There's a
'cause-
good drunk history about it.
Yeah, he had a stroke and basically he was bedridden, effectively.
She was like, let me sign your name.
There was background talk, and it should have happened, of invoking this against Ronald Reagan in the last few years of his presidency, because he was suspected of having Alzheimer's, which it turned out he did. In hindsight, of course, we can say that he was exhibiting symptoms of it. I understand feeling less certain in that moment, because you don't have the hindsight of knowing that he did, in fact, have Alzheimer's.
Just like we have the hindsight now that we would never elect someone who might be sundowning or have a president already that was sundowning.
So Pence basically said that because Trump is still acting the way that he acted when he was elected, like this is still the level of fitness that he's been at.
He's still Trump, man.
Yeah, he hasn't been incapacitated.
If he was nice, that's when we'd be worried.
Exactly.
His brain is
so he said he's not going to do it. This is what the House, the Democrats, wanted to invoke the 25th because it's much faster than impeachment. It's just one and done.
Yeah, we should have happened last week, and they kept being like, "Well, let's see," and it didn't. And then he was like, "Nope."
Instead, they've impeached. My God, I hit a wall all of a sudden. So the process of impeachment, which we didn't have a podcast to talk about when they did it last, is the House of Representatives puts forward articles of impeachment. They then vote on whether or not to bring those articles to the Senate. Bringing those articles to the Senate means that president has been impeached.
Okay.
That's what impeachment is. It's basically...
It's not the removal, it's the process of removal.
Impeachment. Think about the term impeachment in other contexts. If you impeach somebody's motives, you can impugn their motive, that kind of thing. It's basically saying, the House is formally saying, we don't think you're good. We don't think that you can be president anymore. We think that you've committed crimes. We're very concerned.
Which they did with him before with the Hunter Biden stuff? Was that what it was?
It was the Ukraine stuff.
Oh, the Ukraine.
It was related to Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
It was basically that he was obstructing justice and using his foreign policy for personal political gain.
Did that pass the House?
Yeah, he was impeached.
Okay.
He wouldn't have been impeached if it didn't pass the House.
And it didn't pass the Senate.
Well, yeah, exactly. We'll get to that.
Okay.
So many presidents have had articles of impeachment drawn up.
Like who?
George W. Bush had articles of impeachment drawn
For
up.
what?
Being him, all kinds of shit. I believe that articles of impeachment were drawn up against Obama.
I don't remember that.
No, because none of them go anywhere. They don't even get a floor vote. They don't even make it out of the House Judiciary Committee. So it's not uncommon to draw up articles of impeachment. I believe actually Dennis Kucinich drew up articles of impeachment against both Bush and Obama, or at least threatened to.
Cool.
But so in 2019, or it was either late 2019, yeah, it was 2019, drew up articles of impeachment against Donald Trump about Ukraine, and they passed the House. So then it goes to the Senate. The Senate holds a trial where they serve as everything in a trial, basically. And they determine if actual wrongdoing was done, and then they vote. And they need a 2/3 majority.
Okay.
If they get a 2/3 majority to convict, then the president is convicted and removed from office. They can then hold a follow-up vote where they need a simple majority in order to make it so that president can't run for office again or hold office again. And this rule applies all up and down the government. Same basic setup at various levels. You can impeach a senator, you can impeach a judge, you can impeach whomever.
Cool.
It's just trying them. So impeachment in the United States has happened twice before Donald Trump. 2 presidents have been impeached before Donald Trump.
Well, you said a lot have been impeached, but 2
No,
have successfully...
none of them have been impeached.
Articles of impeachment have been written up before.
Exactly. You are not impeached
Unless the House approves?
until the House approves the articles of impeachment. That's it. That's impeachment.
What's the gambling? Like, the House wins.
Oh, yeah, the House always wins. Yeah. When the House passes articles of impeachment, you are impeached.
Okay.
So that's happened twice to 2 different presidents before
Who could
Trump.
they be?
So
I don't even know.
the first is Andrew Johnson.
Oh, didn't know.
Who succeeded to the presidency after Lincoln was killed. He was Lincoln's second vice president.
Okay.
He was not a huge fan of Reconstruction. He was a conservative Southern Democrat. And basically the House passed a law, or Congress passed a law, that, you know how when the president picks their cabinet, the cabinet has to be approved by the Senate. So they have hearings, right, where they vote to approve the cabinet members. After the Civil War, Congress passed a law saying that they would also have to have hearings to approve the firing of a cabinet member.
Interesting.
And this was basically because Andrew Johnson had Lincoln's cabinet, and he didn't want them. He wanted his own cabinet.
So he wanted to fire them. They're like, hey, wait a minute,
Yeah,
Jack.
so they passed this law, and Andrew Johnson said, that's not constitutional. I have the right to have my own staff. As
Kind
basically,
of fair.
Andrew Johnson said that is a violation of the separation of powers, because now you're making the executive totally subordinate to the legislative.
The separation of
Mr.
Mr.
Powers. Yeah. So he said, fuck around and find out, and he fired his Secretary of War.
That's an act of war.
That's right. And the House impeached him for it, for violating that law.
And the Senate came within 1 vote of removing him from office.
Oh, shit.
And I believe the Supreme Court did find that that law was unconstitutional, and that's why the president can fire whoever he wants.
What a kind of silly thing.
Yeah, Andrew Johnson was a bad dude, a bad president.
Like Corn Pop.
Exactly, like Corn Pop. He should have been removed, but he was also definitely set up with his impeachment trial. That was all a game, basically, to
Yeah,
get
it was
him
all
removed
just
from
like,
office.
we don't like
It was
this
House of
guy.
Cards.
Yeah.
And of course, the second impeachment was of William Jefferson Clinton.
And Nixon resigned so he wouldn't get impeached, right?
Exactly. Nixon, Carl Albert, who was the Speaker of the House, and whoever the Senate Majority Leader was, basically they had the votes to remove Nixon.
Yeah.
Not just impeach him, but to convict and remove him. And so he resigned to prevent that from happening.
And so he kept all his benefits, right?
Yeah, but conviction and removal does not automatically strip you for benefits. That's the second vote.
Okay.
Yeah, he was good, fine for the rest of his life. And then Gerald Ford.
We went to the Nixon library.
We sure did.
He got a library.
They all do. And Trump will too. But so Gerald Ford, who succeeded Nixon after his resignation, famously pardoned him.
Oh, yeah.
So that he couldn't be tried privately for
Lucky.
Watergate.
And Gerald Ford, sketchy.
Gerald Ford's very sketchy. Also the only president to have never been elected to the executive branch. Because he was appointed to the vice presidency after Spiro Agnew resigned for being Greek. That's why he had to resign. It turned out in the Constitution you can't be Greek and be the vice president.
They're like, stop breaking dishes in the White House.
Yeah, he...
Get out of here.
Yeah, he put too much olive oil and everything. But so... Yeah, Clinton was impeached for... perjury, basically.
Because he said, I did not have sexual encounters with that woman.
Relations with that woman.
And then he did.
Yes.
So, and there was proof because of the jizzy dress.
That's right. And that all
Jizzy,
came
good
out-
dress, please.
That all came out because there was a special prosecutor named Ken Starr who was hired to investigate his business dealings in Arkansas, the Whitewater scandal.
Mm-hmm.
And in the course of that, he uncovered Paula Jones and Mark Lewinsky and all of our friends.
That's so
from the
Clinton-y. Like, it's like...
We're investigating one scandal,
And
so
then
we find
all
this
this
other one.
other shady shit comes out. And it's like,
Yeah.
everyone's like, but her emails. It's like, yeah, but there's more.
And honestly, like with Andrew Johnson's, Clinton sucks,
Yeah.
but that was bullshit.
Yeah, it was,
Like, it was
just
It was a partisan power play to try to get him
exactly
in trouble.
It was consensual sex.
Yeah.
But he had all this
Those
other
ones
sketchy
were.
stuff.
Yeah.
Those ones were. Yeah.
Yeah.
That didn't mean Clinton was satisfied.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, they were like, Bill, you gotta have some adult affairs so nobody gets mad at you for going on Epstein's plane.
Ugh. Anyway.
Oh, man.
So,
All right.
Okay.
I guess I will. But so...
Clinton is successfully impeached.
Yes, and
he's
he is
removed.
he's acquitted in the Senate.
Okay.
So a president has never been convicted and removed from office,
Wow.
but three now have been impeached.
Because just before we record this podcast, Trump was successfully impeached
Again.
by the.
Already 3 had been impeached, and then Trump is now the first ever president to be impeached twice.
He's special, just like all his special little guys.
So he was impeached by the House of Representatives today. They successfully passed one article of impeachment, accusing him of inciting insurrection against the government.
And he had 10 Republicans that voted against him.
Which makes it the most bipartisan impeachment effort in U.S. history. Yeah. 5 Democrats voted to impeach Clinton.
Oh, wow.
10 Republicans voted to impeach Trump. And previously, the most bipartisan was also Trump's.
Yeah.
Because he had like 1 independent, basically. Or no, I'm sorry. Trump had the most votes to remove previously. I think Clinton's was the most bipartisan. But so yeah, he's been impeached again. He's double impeached.
Yay.
That's, as somebody put it, that is the first paragraph of the obit. It's the only president to be impeached twice. That's his legacy now.
He's a winner. What
Yeah,
can I
that's
say?
right. So 10 Republicans voted to impeach, including Liz Cheney, who sucks, and fuck Liz Cheney, because she's Dick Cheney's daughter, and she's exactly like him.
Yeah.
So don't let the fact that she voted to impeach Donald Trump turn her into a resistance icon.
Yeah.
Because she's awful.
A lot of it is a little too late, but hopefully... But I want all the Republicans to turn on Trump. McConnell's turned on Trump. He said he supports impeachment.
Yeah, he said
that in
he said he
private.
hasn't... He said he doesn't know how he'll vote, but he hasn't decided. That's his public statement now. That's big. One of the people that voted to impeach is a freshman Republican congressman named Peter Meyer, who his seat in Michigan is the one that Justin Amash had until this last fall. Mm-hmm. Justin Amash, who was an independent at the time, was the only non-Democrat to vote to impeach Trump before.
Wow.
He was a Republican. He was the first member of the Republican House caucus to call for Trump's impeachment. It's just funny that the same seat still voted to impeach.
Yeah.
So now they're going to send this to the Senate.
Tomorrow? Or in
I think they're sending it like today. But McConnell has said officially, publicly, that the Senate's not coming back until the 19th.
And today's the 13th.
Yes.
It's so...
And Biden's sworn in on the 20th.
It's just everything is taking so long. As I tweeted, it's like people get evicted the night before Thanksgiving, and people get late fees, people get, their cars towed. But it's like the Senate can take as much time as they want.
Yeah. Well, that's when our recess is.
It's just... also, it's like... when the House gathered in the Capitol today to vote, they had like a bunch of military people there protecting them.
Yeah.
Which, like, if I were the squad, I don't know if I would trust those people. But
I probably trust the military more than the police.
I trust them more. It's still it seemed pretty positive. A lot of there was a honestly very touching picture of a few Black Army men who were getting a picture taken in front of the Rosa Parks statue.
Yeah,
it's like,
in the statue.
it was kind of healing to see people being chill in the Capitol.
The military is much more diverse and authentically working class than the police forces are.
Yeah.
There's a reason that Trump does a lot worse among uniformed military personnel than he does among cops.
And so anyway, that happened today, and it's just like, why not just do it over video? Like, just why can't the Senate tonight vote?
The norms.
The norms are gone.
The one thing maybe in
do it over the group text.
The one thing maybe in anti-Trump's favor about waiting is that Warnock and Ossoff have not been sworn in yet.
Ooh.
So that's 2 more votes to remove. So we will see. So they're going to basically have his trial and vote while Biden's president.
Which feels weird because he won't be president anymore.
Yes.
For them to be impeaching him, why do this?
Well, one is to demonstrate a precedent, even a legal precedent, that this kind of thing is impeachable and removable, convictable over. Another is they can then hold the follow-up vote to prevent Trump from holding office again. Just consequences, basically. We don't have consequences.
Would he not get the Secret Service to guard him and everything?
No, not necessarily.
Why? I thought that was the case.
Because he'll still be the president. He'll still be a former president.
Well, I read that it's basically he has to pay for it himself. The taxpayers, when you get fully impeached, you don't get all those financial benefits.
There's a lot of disinformation about this going around.
Okay.
It's not really clear what happens when a president stops.
Because it's never happened.
All we know is they can do the follow-up vote to prevent him from holding office again.
Which is the most important.
Yeah. We don't hold our elected officials accountable for stuff like this. We don't. Gina Haspel, the current CIA director, was one of the leaders of the torture program before. Like, we don't, and that's how this keeps happening. I mean, Obama should have put Bush on trial. It didn't happen.
But he was like,
we gotta move on.
And this is happening right now. All these Republicans, and I feel like some Democrats, like, we need unity.
I think the fact that we've gotten to this point means that we need to break the precedent of just letting presidents get away with this shit.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
I mean,
he needs to be an example of.
It's like, America, is famously lax on white collar crime.
Yeah, very.
White collar is the business guys, right?
Yeah.
On white collar crime, like nobody
fraud,
really going to jail for what happened on Wall Street. People not going to jail for all this stuff. And it's like, I really think that Trump needs to go to jail.
I think so. Yeah. Because it's not white collar crime anymore.
So then how could that happen? How could Trump
he would have to have a criminal trial.
Which would be separate from everything.
And totally unrelated to the impeachment. Basically, so...
Because you said, like, convict him. Like, what's the convicting?
Convicting in the Senate is not a criminal conviction. It's literally just the Senate saying, we're convinced he's done this. But it's not at the criminal level of proof or of statute. I mean, impeachment is for high crimes and misdemeanors, which is not even defined in the Constitution. So that's basically up to the Senate to decide if it meets that standard.
Yeah.
And then the punishment is removal from office. However, he has a lot of cases pending against him, criminal cases, that he is basically immune from as president. It was established in, I believe, Clinton v. Jones, that presidents could not be...
That's my new pen name, Clinton v. Jones.
Yeah, that presidents can't be held criminally liable for things they've done outside of the presidency while they're in office.
It's the stupidest thing
ever. It's to prevent, basically, this person just came to mind who just died, so it wouldn't be him. It's to prevent people like Sheldon Adelson from just constantly filing criminal complaints against the president to stop them from doing their job. That's the idea.
Yeah.
The idea is that
someone
once you're out... limited
funds.
Yeah, it's like once you're out, you're liable again. But while you're the president, your job as president is so important that you have a temporary immunity from personal prosecution for things done outside the presidency.
It's interesting because Biden being maybe Biden is doing this so that people, I mean, this has been the whole thing with him. It's like, is he talking nice about Republicans, one, because he's basically a Republican, or two, because he wants to get them on his side? And so, you know, amidst this, Biden's been super like, we need Republicans. Republicans are great.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but he might follow in Obama's footsteps and just be like, you know, I mean, I don't think he'd pardon Trump, but...
No.
Yeah. At least it's not a president that would pardon him.
No. If Trump wants a pardon, then he needs to make a deal with Mike Pence and resign tonight. That's how Trump gets a pardon.
So I guess that's a benefit of Pence not invoking the 25th.
Yeah.
And we don't have to have President Pence.
My poster wouldn't have to be updated. But Trump he's still thinking about self-pardoning. But, you know, Bill Barr apparently told him not to do it. His White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, told him not to do it. It seems like not a good idea. For a couple of reasons. One, nobody's sure if you can.
Yeah.
Nobody's sure if you have the authority to self-pardon. Two, if he is, let's say, stripped of his titles of office in an impeachment hearing in the Senate, or if he's found criminally liable for... Basically, if anything happens... that might even remotely void that pardon. Even if it goes to the Supreme Court and they find that he didn't actually have the ability to do it. And so in hindsight, it's gone.
You can't undo it.
A pardon involves admission of guilt. You can only receive a pardon if you're admitting that you've done the crime. And so he could be opening himself up to very serious prosecution if he pardons himself for something that he is later found to not have the ability to pardon himself for because it can be seen legally as an admission of guilt.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
So that's part of why his lawyers are like, don't do it. Do not self-pardon yourself.
It seems like there's a lot of things that Trump is like, just let me do this. And every step of the way, he's being stopped.
He's being talked down from it.
Or he's being talked down from it, which is partially why the leadership is so terrible. Like, it's like there are some things that Trump could have done that would have benefited the people, like the $2,000 check. Like, if he just went for it, but then he had McConnell in his ear being like,
and there's a lot that it seems like it's a lot worse that...
Yeah, that he could have, like, so many quotes about Trump, you know, wanting to nuke someone or something.
So basically, where we're at is he's been impeached. They're going to hold the trial probably in the first couple weeks of Joe Biden's presidency. I think that Mike Pence is the acting president effectively right now. I don't think that Trump is... I mean, the National Guard being sent to the Capitol building last week, hours after the insurrection started, by all accounts, that was Pence. That was not Trump that called for that.
Wow.
Trump was refusing to do it. He was just watching the news and kind of digging it. By all accounts, Pence just went around his back and called for the National Guard to come.
Yeah, I saw the thing that's like, Pence is tired of Trump's bullshit.
Pelosi has spoken to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and basically made sure that there is stuff in the way of preventing Trump from accessing the nuclear codes for the rest of his presidency.
Which I'm sure a lot of Trump supporters see that as a coup.
Well, it is, in a way. But that's okay. It's good. Because the president's bad.
Yeah, and so some consequence... So Trump is finally having some people turn on him. You know, it didn't take Trump insulting all these people and their wives. It didn't take Trump giving everybody a deadly virus for them to... And shit-talking all of them. What finally did it was this for some of these people. Maybe because a lot of these people want to be reelected. Or maybe because they're actually saw that 5 people died.
I think for McConnell, it's because Trump was too focused on this to help out in the Georgia election.
Yeah,
and probably lost 2 seats.
Wasn't there a quote about that McConnell blames Georgia on Trump? So there's a lot of these little mistakes that Trump has made because he has no allegiance to anyone. It's very like Shakespearean, like just the like, well, I fuck everybody over. I didn't think that they would, but I'm the king, so I didn't think it would come back to bite me in the ass.
Yeah.
But he finally got banned from Twitter and Facebook, and he got banned from like all PGA golfing stuff.
PGA broke their contract with Trump.
So
with
that's
Trump
awesome.
Yeah.
So there's actually some consequences happening. It's of course a lot too late, but I will take all the consequences.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it all.
Yeah.
And of course, in the biggest news the last couple of weeks. Army Hammer's a real freak.
Yeah, so what was happening on Twitter in this past week,
And
too,
this is how we're going to wrap it up. Go
is, trigger warning, Army Hammer.
Twitter warning.
Army Hammer, who is the son of the
He's the heir of the Armand Hammer. His name is Armand Hammer.
Yeah, his name is a pun, which should have been a warning sign. Yeah. So it came out a while ago that he's like been, sexting and DMing women. I don't know if they're like kind of underage. It's just like a lot of sketchiness.
I don't. My understanding is that there hasn't necessarily been underagedness or non-consensualness. Because everything's just about the content. It's not. I haven't seen anything about the
I'm saying in the past.
Yeah.
It was
but I think
kind
even
of
then it
James
was just that it was
Franco-y.
weird.
Yeah, and I think he was married at the time. It was
It's stuff like that. Like I think it's non-criminal, but sketchy.
That he's like too horny to function.
Yeah.
And then this week, somebody, the same person I think that had leaked the other ones, was leaking this allegation that Armie Hammer is very into rape and murder and blood-sucking and cannibal play, basically.
Yeah, he's a real freak.
And that
real
he maybe
sicko.
has actually sucked the blood of some of these simps.
Yeah.
And he has not put out a statement.
No, he just did.
Oh, today?
That's what reminded me of it. Yeah.
Oh, what was the statement?
He pulled out of a movie that he's working on with J-Lo that he's going to shoot for 4 months in the Dominican Republic. And he basically...
That sounds safe.
He basically said, like, in light of all these, like, this bullshit, all these rumors and lies that are spreading about me, he's like, I'm not going to leave my kids for 4 months. Like, we'll get to the bottom of it, basically. So he's denying it. He's saying that they're not real.
Dang.
The DMs that were leaked.
The Dominican. Yeah. There was a great tweet from Paul F. Tompkins that was to the tune of "We Didn't Start the Fire." It was like,
It's like riots at the Capitol, Armie Hammer cannibal.
We didn't start the fire. So that made me happy. I'd like to believe that he is a cannibal.
Yeah.
Because all rich people are, drinking the blood of young people.
Yeah,
getting their adrenochrome, etc. There's also been some QAnoners that have been like, wait, are we wrong? Like, it's not coming true, guys.
Yeah.
There's also a great video of Alex Jones breaking and just telling QAnon people to leave him alone.
It's so good. Okay, so with all that, we're going to leave you. Thank you, as always, for listening.
Yes, thank you.
We'd
love your subscribing and reviewing.
Yeah, please subscribe, review, rate. We'll be back with you shortly to talk about what else is going on.
We'll keep you posted on everything. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and Kyle and I on our individual things, and we will keep you updated.
And keep looking at the stars.
Good night and good cluck.
I forgot about that. I like that.